Am I the a-hole for revealing the truth to my teen daughter as to why I was divorcing her father? I was with my ex-husband for 10 years. Towards the end, we lived more like roommates than a married couple. The romance and excitement started to fizzle after we had our daughter 14 years ago. We both became stressed with all the extra hours we had to work to keep up with childcare expenses, and we didn't do anything to maintain our marriage, just our finances. As time went on, we just grew farther and farther apart. I loved my ex-husband with all my heart, and I did everything I could to try and save my marriage when I realized how bland and distant we had gotten. I scheduled couples therapy, I planned date nights, I gave my husband gifts, and did everything I could to spice up things in the bedroom. Nothing seemed to work, and I realized after years of trying that I would never make my husband fall back in love with me. I was heartbroken and isolated within my own marriage. I was sleeping in the same bed as the man I loved, but he was a million miles away. I asked him a few times if he wanted a divorce, but he said that he didn't want to do that to our daughter, and let's at least wait until she turned 18 and went to college. The confusion of all this tore me up inside, but I just settled for whatever closeness he was comfortable with. I convinced myself he was right, and I ignored my unhappiness for the sake of my daughter. One day I had gotten a new phone, but I was having trouble setting it up, and I wanted to use an old phone while I waited for an appointment at the Verizon store. I ended up booting up my husband's old phone from about 6 months prior, thinking it had been wiped when he got a new one. I learned very quickly after turning it on that it in fact had not been wiped, and not only were all his conversations still there, but so was his text chain with his mistress. I went through the phone and found evidence of an affair he had with a 20-year-old girl from his gym. There were loads of dirty texts, and I found nudes they were sending back and forth. She knew he was married with a child but didn't care, and they would even make jokes about his cheating in their conversations. I had been feeling unloved in my marriage for years, but this pain was something I had never felt before. I had never felt so small, so useless, and disrespected in my entire life. I knew I couldn't take another ounce of hurt from remaining married to my husband, and when he got home that night, I placed the phone right in front of him and said nothing. He just looked at the phone for a second and then looked at me and said, "What, you snooping or something?" I told him I wanted out, and that we should have ended this dead horse of a marriage years ago. He started to protest, saying I was being selfish and I wasn't prioritizing our daughter. But I said I was done being manipulated by him, and that would spend another day as his wife. He yelled at me, calling me a SHT wife and mother, which hurt. But I stood firm in my decision, and I didn't let him influence my choice. I served him with court papers the following week, and things became very tense in our home. Before all this, our family life had been seemingly normal. We had tried to keep up the facade of a happy family for our daughter, so when we started this intense fight, my daughter instantly picked up on the change in energy in the house. Update: when my daughter first found out about the divorce, she started doing Parent Trap-style things, like planning more family hangouts and asking we all go out to dinner together more often. I think she was feeling the distance between me and her dad, and she was desperate to repair our relationship and just wanted to see things go back to normal. My daughter had always been too young to understand the cracks in me and her father's marriage, and I never had trauma dumped on her. When I was young, my mother would constantly complain to me about my own father, and I always remember how confused and sad it would make me. I loved my dad, and I didn't understand why my mom just couldn't love him too. So I made a point as a mother to never unload or overshare to my daughter. We still had a close relationship, but I never spoke badly about her father to her. Anyways, fast forward to this week, my husband and I's divorce was in process, and the house has remained tense. I decided it was time to sit my daughter down and tell her the truth, that me and her dad were going to be together anymore. She did not take it well at all, and it was a tough conversation to have all on my own with my daughter. My husband didn't want to be there for it since he said he didn't want to stress her out. I will never be able to get the image of my weeping, confused daughter out of my head. She is 14, but it was like she suddenly regressed back to a toddler. She just kept asking why I didn't love Daddy anymore, and begging us to please fix it. She said she didn't want to lose her family, and I tried to reassure her that we both loved her and we would both always be here for her. I had no idea what to say when she responded to this with, "But Daddy's not even here for me right now." It was one of the most painful, difficult moments of my entire life. I just held her as she cried in my arms for hours, then we watched one of her favorite movies, and I put her to bed like I did when she was little. The following week was hard, and she would break down crying often. I met with the school counselor to arrange in-school therapy with her, and I checked in with her every day to assure her that she was loved and to see how she was feeling. She tried to confront my husband a couple of times about why we were breaking up, but all he would say was, "Ask your mother." Finally, towards the end of the week, my husband gave her this line again after she had questioned him about the divorce. I heard her screaming, asking him why he kept saying that. I walked into the room they were arguing in, and my daughter just shot me an angered look and asked me what her dad meant. She was angry and crying. She walked up to me and asked, "What did you do?" This is where I may have effed up. I had been trying so long to protect my family and spare my daughter's feelings, but I just couldn't bear the thought of her thinking I hadn't tried to save my family in every way possible before I asked for a divorce. I looked at her and said that her father had cheated on me. I didn't give any details. I didn't say the girl's age, but it was enough to send my daughter into another breakdown. She collapsed in my arms, crying for a moment before standing back up and chewing her dad out. My daughter started yelling at her father, reprimanding him for doing that to me, and just begging him for a reason why he would do this to our family. She just kept saying, "You hurt me too, Dad. You hurt me too." It was such a heartbreaking scene. That night, I put my daughter to bed like she was a toddler again. She was just so broken down, and I was doing anything to make her feel better. Since that day, she hasn't spoken to my husband, and she sees her school therapist every day. She still checks in with me and speaks to me like normal, but I am watching such a depressing change in my sweet baby girl. I see her spirit has been affected, and some of her childhood joy and innocence have been watered down since she started going through all this. My heart is breaking, and I wonder if I really screwed up and caused her extra pain by revealing the truth about her father's infidelity.